Hey, hi everyone. I'm doing this review a little differently, just because I haven't been well recently and I don't really want to be on camera. So we're doing this a completely different way where you'll have a picture to look at while I, um, discuss the book and my thoughts. I think this is now my 14th review. So yeah, this is You Won't Believe Me, and I can't pronounce the author's name, but you can see that on the picture. And I will put a copy of my thoughts in. So this book, I really didn't kind of like that much, but it had enough to keep me going until the end. So I gave this 4 stars. It's a YA thriller and it's 346 pages. This took me a little bit longer than normal to get through it, just because I kind of had to find the motivation. Um, it's a really, really trippy book. The ending was really confusing. There was a lot of unnecessary detail for the plot. It didn't get that many stars on Goodreads. I think it got about 3 points something on the review side. And a lot of people are saying the similar thing, like what was that ending that we'll talk about. That it just went from one thing to another, that there was a load of stuff that didn't really need to be part of the story, I felt. And yeah, I wasn't the only one who kind of had problems with the book. This is the first book I've read by this author. Um, just because the blurb, it sounded like really interesting and a book you'd want to pick up, you know? So I picked up and I've got through it. I don't think realistically I'll read it again just because I'm so confused about the ending and what, what the hell happened. Like, I'm reading it and I'm so confused about it, but no. I mean, it wasn't all bad. I mean, it had some juicy bits because with my reviews, I take the juicy kind of detail and then kind of leave out the unnecessary bits. So that kind of thing. But I'm going to. Sorry, that's a bit thinking. I'm using my husband's Discord to record. So we're trying something completely different. I want to do this for the TV shows that I wanted to review as well. But we're still trying to figure out how to do that one. So this is basically a thriller book. There is a pandemic in this book. There is like a virus and stuff. I believe the author got the inspiration from COVID because if I remember correctly, they written the back in the acknowledgements. Okay, so they wrote the book prior to the pandemic and what happened during the first terrible COVID year made me wonder if it was worth finishing. So I don't know whether they got the inspiration from COVID. I don't think they did, but I think that kind of COVID helped them finish this a bit. So yeah, this author has done other books called Unnatural Deeds Alone that night. So I will read the blurb and then I will go on to my notes. So first survive, then escape. Willow is alone, confined to her bed with restraints. She can't remember how she got there or how long she's been there. An old lady appears in her room to feed her twice a day. Granny doesn't talk, but Willow can hear thumping from somewhere beyond her door. It's not Granny's shuffling steps. It's too loud to be Granny's cats. Is it someone, something? Then Granny's cat dies in Willow's room and Granny follows a few days later. Willow will do anything to survive, but freeing herself from her bed is only the beginning, because there is someone else in the house who is a mysterious teen who calls himself Elijah, and he is the reason she's the hostage or the key to her escape. Now, as you can tell by that blurb, it was really interesting to kind of pick it up. The one nag that I do have with this book is when we get to part 2, because this is broken up into 3 sections of part 1, part 2 and part 3. When we get to part 2, Elijah is no longer called Elijah, the author just puts E. So the author doesn't put his full name, just every time his name comes up it's just E. That really annoyed me, because when you're writing a book, or you know, or you're reading something, put the full name, just don't put like E or A, because it's just pointless. It just seemed like a lazy little thing to do, and it just kind of, I don't know why the author was, you know, through the whole first 158 pages is like, you know, Elijah, and then we get to part 2 of the book and it's just E. I'm trying to find an example. So E walks, so on a page 172, at the bottom, E walks by to check on my progress. But in reality, it should be Elijah walks by to check on my progress. And this is throughout the rest of the book where it's just E. And it kind of makes it look like that in the draft she just put E for short, and then like whoever proof checked it didn't check it probably. That is my little nag, and I think I'm gonna, as I actually say this, I think I'm going to actually update this on Goodreads and just add that when we get to part 2, we then just get E. So if you're reading this book and all of a sudden you get the name of just E come up, it's meant to be Elijah. I think it should be Elijah, but the author's just put E, which is really annoying, but you know, what can you do when that happens? I'm just trying to take a tab out so I can remember to do this. So yeah, as I say, the book is 346 pages, YA thriller, gave it 4 stars. My thoughts are it's a really trippy read, it's confusing, a lot of unnecessary detail for the plot. The ending was just embarrassing. I just sat there like, what, I'm so confused. And obviously the other issue I now have is, as I'm doing this review to all of you, cutting the name down to just E. So we start off with the book where Willow is tied to the bed by Granny, but Granny gives Willow pills to make her sleep. And Willow doesn't remember how she got there, so kind of Granny is kind of drugging her and stuff like that, and Willow kind of has to remember how she got there, but she can't, and all the pills do is just make her sleep and not do anything, and Granny kind of has a bedpan and stuff like that, so that was a bit disgusting to read about. And then we get to the part where Willow hasn't had the pills and starts to get her memory back. She remembers her friend August, who lives on the same road as her. Willow also remembers that her grandparents are dead, and Granny isn't Willow's granny. So Granny is constantly telling her to be quiet, not make noise, and stuff like that, and feeding her this really weird food paste thing. So I will clarify now, and I will spoil it now, that August, who she's been talking to, was actually Elijah. She's never spoken to the real August from school, who she fancies a lot. And her granny isn't her granny because Granny is Elijah's granny. And obviously Willow's grandparents are dead. The cat dies, and then along with Granny, Willow shouts till a man jumps on her bed and tells her just to hush. So the cat suddenly then passes away, and then Granny then dies as well, where Granny just drops to the floor and she's got kind of blood and stuff coming out of her eyes, as I remember. As I say, really weird book. It was just trippy throughout. Willow mentions how there was a pandemic where people get sick and die, how everyone had to have the meds or die, and the survival rate is 0.001. So the pandemic, which I can't remember what the name was called, but basically people were kind of dying and getting sick, and the symptoms that were coming out were weird, nothing similar to what we've had. So it's like an apocalypse kind of thing. So Willow's father is a man who makes drugs and stuff and is trying to get this specific drug out on the market to try and help everybody, beginning with Z. I can't remember the full names of the ins and outs of it. But yeah, Willow's father is working in the pharmaceutical, if I pronounce that properly, to help with the pandemic, but it fires when it turns people into monsters, apparently. So apparently people have been having these medications and vaccines, and apparently it backfired, and it made them monsters to the point where they would then die and then come back. Or Elijah's sister is called Susie, where she kept like having visions and she kept feeling like she needed to do bad stuff, so it was kind of stuff on that end. So Elijah doesn't really shoot or anything, he has like a bow and arrow, so he kind of kills people with his bow and arrow. So Elijah heads out onto the roof with a bow and arrow and kills a man that Willow sees. And Willow sees this. Willow makes an escape to help the man from Elijah, for Elijah to take her back into the house and locks her in the room. So with this one, we had a randomly wandered onto the property, and then Elijah kind of shot him dead. And yeah, with a bow and arrow, and Willow had to see and witness all of this, which is really harsh considering like what she's going through and stuff. And we also find out that Willow's father, who trialed some drugs, was contaminated, so people started to act crazy, seeing things that aren't there, making them strong and making them bite. It takes a while once someone is infected, and Willow has started seeing things that aren't there, so she's now going to worry if she's affected. When I say this is really trippy, it's because when we get to the end of the book, it goes completely like different kind of thing. Willow's father made a drug to help prevent the virus, but it comes with side effects of seeing things that aren't there. Willow discovers that Granny is Elijah's grandmother, and Willow finds a picture of Elijah and his family that he's had to bury one by one in the yard of the house. Willow finds out that Elijah's sister Susie killed their parents by shooting them and tried to strangle their grandmother. Willow leaves with Elijah going with her. So Susie had these bad thoughts and that she needed to kill and stuff, and she did with her parents and her grandma, but I think her grandma luckily survived up until she died at the foot of the bed where Willow was. Willow is so like willed that she's determined to get out of that little house, that little hellhole, and find other people and try and find help and stuff. They both have to try and find Willow's parents, but are stopped as the bridge is cracked. Willow sees metal in the marsh and realises if she can get to her phone, maybe she can get to work. Elijah blocks Willow's view of the inside of the car, and there are dead bodies in it, with Willow now seeing it all unfold. So this is where it gets trippy, because at this point we assume that it's Willow's parents, but actually her parents are absolutely fine. Elijah just had a couple of people who got onto the property who shouldn't have been there, killed them, placed them in the car in the marsh, for then Willow to kind of, Elijah manipulated like Willow's her whole life basically in order to make believe this story because he wanted revenge for the drug that went wrong on Susie, which was her father. And he couldn't get to her father, so Willow was the next victim of basically being kidnapped and held against her will. Bearing in mind the house doesn't work or anything, there's no electric or anything, there's a generator and they have to find a cap for it in order for it to work, and they finally do. But Elijah doesn't seem happy about it, so he kind of jeopardised everything in order to stop Willow from finding out the truth. But we're saying this, Elijah gets electric shock from the generator and collapses when Willow thinks that Elijah is dead. She uses the old radio to communicate to the outside world, and with success, she communicates with a man. I can't say his name, but she asks for police and that to arrive, which she followed through on his word, and then sent help. And then luckily, she got help. So Willow escapes the room where Elijah locked her in. She gets locked in this little room once again when she finally manages to pick the lock. Elijah, the police do turn up, one officer in a patrol car, and Elijah basically kills the police officer straight out with a bow and arrow, with Willow witnessing his death. As Elijah is digging a hole for the police officer to bury him, Willow has a look into the room that was locked after finding the keys. She enters the room to find a computer and articles about her disappearance and about the failed drugs. She remembers her location is Miami. Willow gets rescued by police and is taken back home. Everyone makes a fuss of her. Elijah is in prison. Elijah was pretending to be August, so Willow never spoke to the real August. Willow goes on a date with the real August to the movie theatre to see a film. Willow sees Susie, and Susie tells Willow to rip August's throat out. Willow wakes in bed to a message from August, but she knows it's Elijah, but when she searches for Elijah, no results are found. She now knows she has to save the world. So in saying this, with the ending being really tricky, it's like a loop book where they all have a role to play and they kind of have to repeat it until they get it right and save the world. I still don't understand this book fully, and to be honest, I'm not really going to look more because I generally don't think I will read the book, but if I'm going to say that if you've ever seen the film Triangle with Melissa George, it's a loop film where it's constantly going over and over until she changes something in order to get out of it. It kind of reminds me a little bit like that film, and it sounds like it as well. So yeah, so that's kind of all I have to say about the film, and this was a really short one. If you like a story about pandemics and stuff and weird stuff and time loops, this is your book. But then otherwise, sorry family, it may not be your cup of tea, but I thought I'd review it anyway. Probably don't even need to read the books, to be fair. I've told you everything that kind of happens in it. Yeah, so thank you for watching, and hope to see you in the next review, which will be, I'll probably read a book without doing a review, and then I'll probably do another book for a review. So goodbye.